Hey everyone, welcome to week 4 of U101. I'm going to talk about the things that you're going to look at this week, and then also we're going to do a little review of some of the concepts that we mentioned in TMA 11. You'll see in the notes that I've given for everyone, there's some things where it says like also more on the video, so this is the video. So to start week 4, there's a couple points that I want to make. Number 1, you're going to see in the first, I think the first slide, it says that you'll need a digital camera. Let's remember that these do a very good job, so don't worry about having so click, because phone cameras do an excellent job, so you don't need to worry about if you don't have a physical digital camera. Same as photo editing software. Remember that things like PowerPoint and Keynote are excellent resources to adjust for brightness, to crop an image, to sort of add some different effects to it. So that can be really useful for now, just to clean up the page. You don't need InDesign or Photoshop or After Effects. You don't need that for now, so don't worry about that. Unless you do have it and you want to use it, then that's fine. Go for it. Practice makes perfect, really. Another thing I would in the first part of it, you'll see where you have to start drawing lists of things that are frustrating design, for instance. So you'll be drawing all of these lists up. One good practice that I think that you can start adopting or doing if you have the time and if you have sort of the interest, is as you're listing these things, also start sketching them. So do little doodles of them, create these sort of semiotics, so these iconographies. Those are two big words, I'm sorry. Sort of drawings of what it represents or representations of it, or a camera, what does a cliche camera look like, or, as you're drawing these lists, because it becomes really good practice afterwards when you need to draw a library. Then a library has sort of columns and that triangle on top, and people can understand that that's sort of an institution. So it's just those little things that as you develop that are really good design skills. So it's just a good exercise to do while you're doing it. The next section you're going to talk, you're going to look at mind maps. This is critical. This is one of the parts of learning design that is just so key. And as I hadn't even seen the tutorial of this week yet, and just the day before, I was drawing these ideas for this project that we're working on, and I did a mind map. It's an innate part of design. And keep in mind this is a mind map. This is the 4th version of it, and things were moving around at different points. So everything now is centered on this one, as you can see with the arrows, but before the hierarchy was quite different. The arrows were in different directions. So that's the value of you do it once and then you look at it and you're okay, well I need to change it. So you just re-sketch it and you re-sketch it, and you do it 5 or 6 times, and that's totally fine, and that's really useful, especially when you go to submit into Compendium, because you have the draft, and instead of thinking on the computer and stuff where sort of the errors or the issues when you have to correct them take a bit more time, this way you just have your pen and paper and you're just whipping out the ideas, and you're quickly just figuring out how to structure it and then transferring it over into your submission. So just keep that in mind. Mind maps, super useful. Then in one of the next sections that you're going to get, you're going to see what is design. Now, I hate this question, but I say that with a really warm heart. I hate this question because you aren't expected to answer it. Right now, you're not expected to answer it for the entire time that you're studying design. It's not until a few years into working as a designer or working in the field of design that you really start feeling confident in the answer that you give. That being said, you don't have to worry about giving a good answer, but you really do need to start thinking a lot about what design is for you, what it is for others, what it means for different people, to just help you frame where you want to be with design eventually when the time comes that you will be able to answer it. Later on, you're also going to see a couple points about what a designer profile looks like. You're going to see a point, I think, which is quite important, which is uncertainty, and that's something that designers really need to embrace, the ability to work within frames where you don't have all the answers, and that's okay, because that it's all going to come meshing in together at some point, which may not be now, but that things will work along and sort of come to an answer without having all the concrete decisions or ideas in place at different stages. In one of the last sections, you're also going to look at thinking about design thinking. So that's, I think, section 2.3. And there's going to be a list of different things that you need to know about what design thinking is, or some of the different qualities of design thinking. Fun exercise that I think would be worth it. It's not needed, but I think it's quite useful, is as you're going through these lists, start rephrasing them just to think about what it means for you, because the way that someone else has framed it may not be the way that's the most effective for you. So just think about like what they're saying and how that's useful, or how you would be applying it in your work. So that's it for this week in terms of the content. Now we'll move on to TMA 11 and some of the comments that come up from there. So there's a lot of resonance between everyone's work. There's a lot of things that I think are quite useful to say to all of you and to just talk about in general. So the first part is creative ideas. I don't want to, it's the first exercise, so it's all right, but a bag being used to put like books in, or a bag to be used to put fruit in, or to put food or clothing, that's what it is. Like, that's what a bag does. An unedited bag is used to put things in. So those aren't really going outside the scope of like reality a little bit, or like the obvious answers. So you want to be a little bit further afield from that and start thinking about, there were some of you who mentioned like laptop sleeve, which is, it's easy to think of, it's easy to do, but it's not the most intuitive thing at first glance when you see sort of like a paper bag. And then I sort of given the example to all of you about like using it as sort of a kangaroo pouch for like an orphaned baby kangaroo. And it's not like, that's probably not what you're going to use a paper bag for, but it goes hand in hand with what we were saying of like uncertainty, in that they aren't real ideas, but they do help at some point of like, okay, well, you're carrying, not just clothing or something, but you're using it as more of like a fur, like a kangaroo, like it's veterinary at that point. It doesn't make sense, but it still could be translatable to other ideas, or it could help, create other concepts or be mixed in with other ideas. So that's why like it's really good to start going creative and wild with your list of ideas, and then you can start intermixing them, you can start blending them, and that's when like good new ideas come out. So that's just what I want to say about creativity. Next, I think all of you have like good starting points with your sketch. There's a lot of you who are drawing what it is, so that's really great. Like you're being, the visuals of the sketch are descriptive, but sometimes they do need the description beside, which isn't what you want to be doing with a sketch. A sketch should be standalone. You should be able to draw it and people know exactly what it is, but then also make use of like human scale or different contexts to really showcase the size of it, or in proportion to other things. Only because there's some of them where you draw it and it could be 10 centimeters tall, or it could be 10 meters, but you really have no grounding for that. So I'm gonna just put a slide on right now that shows sort of the difference between some of the things that you guys were doing about different hierarchies of images, how the image is set up, and how it's presented as a sketch to help the exercise, and then also some of the just like really easy adjustments that you can make that I really want to see implemented in your next ones, that just like elevate the quality that much more and are just super easy things to implement. This is the like beauty of TMA 11, in that it's worth like next to nothing in terms of your grade, but it gives like great feedback to say like, okay, well, this is where you are now, and we can really just make these quick changes to make it that much better. Next, I think phrasing, in some cases, it was really successful. Phrasing, I mean the way that you're describing things. Try to be as sort of impersonal as possible. There are moments when, like if we ask like, what is your motivation? Then like, I wanted to do this, or like, I thought this was, that is totally fine. But then when you start describing, let's say the sketch, it isn't about you anymore. It's the same as what we were talking about in the tutorials for the critique. The moment you say like, I like something, or I decided, then it's passing through you, and critique goes onto you and not onto, whatever you've sketched or whatever you're critiquing. Meaning that, if you say like, I like that it's black because it matches with the color scheme, then it's about you, instead of like, the object is black to match the color scheme. You've removed yourself from it, and that's a lot better as a designer to sort of like protect your vision, and to especially protect yourself like in an academic setting of the grades that you'll get and the critiques that you'll get. So just keep that in mind. Keep it third person rather than first person, and things will be really great for the descriptions. Then I also wanted to talk about submissions. There's a couple practices that designers have, or in an academic context you should have. One of them is sort of the way that you're submitting these TMAs. I'm gonna show a couple examples of like what a sort of better looking TMA submission should start to look like. Again, this is the value of TMA 11 because you didn't know this before and there was no way to know it, but now we can start pushing on that. So Times New Roman, get rid of it. Like, there's almost no context in which like Times New Roman is used in conjunction with like lots of visuals in like a poster setting or a one-page submission setting. So pick things that are like sans serif, so things like Arial, Tahoma, Calibri, so things like that. And you want to stay sort of minimal with the amount of differences between things. So like stick to like just basic black, which you all were doing, so that's really great. And just like subtitles are in bold 12 and then the content is in like regular 12, so that you're keeping things in a good hierarchy. And then think about how you're spacing it and how you're organizing the page. So I'm just going to show a couple examples of like what that could look like. So thinking about the fact that the sketch should take like a big part of it, that you should be able to communicate things. If you're drawing a list of different things, then you shouldn't have the drawing sort of in the middle of that list and then like a couple little scragglers at the end. Like you don't want that because it's just confusing and like you don't see the full effect of all of your work. And that's really what I want you to do, is be able to really showcase effectively your ideas and get them communicated through without any issues of like readability or aesthetics or like construction of the page. So I just want those things to sort of be anchored. There's also a YouTube video that I had done before about like the absolute basics of poster layout. I highly suggest you take a look at that one. That's for sort of larger scale things like A0 or A1 pages, but you can easily transfer that back down to like an A4 page. And it's just these general ideas about like what a nice looking submission should be. And that helps regardless of whether that part is being evaluated or not. It allows people to just look at it and look at your ideas more clearly and not have any biases because of how potentially confusing the page is set up. So just keep that in mind. And then otherwise, I think that's that for the comments for the TMA 11. Otherwise, I think you did a good job with a starting point, and just keep the recommendations in mind. They'll be more than helpful, not just for your time working on this module with me, but just in the future. It's things that stick with you the entire way through in design practice, and they're just recommendations that will save you a lot of time later on. So that's it. Hope you have a good week. Do well with the work. It seems quite enjoyable. It seems like there's a bit of theory, so there's like a couple of chunks, but I'm sure you'll get through it. And it is some basics on like what design is, how designers think. So it's a good informative way to get a good grounding about design. So yeah, hope you enjoy. See you.